Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 65. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone who has subscribed to the show on any platform, has liked, rated, or reviewed. Your support allows us to continue to bring on expert guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guests today. Also want to thank our sponsors. Samson Equipment has been providing uncompromising quality for over 40 years. Samson products are long-lasting and made of the highest quality equipment on the market. Each project is built from the ground up with the ability to customize every need. The team at Samson focuses on developing the highest quality relationships with their customers, in addition to providing them unparalleled quality and every piece of equipment bearing the Samson name. Learn more about Samson's professional weight room solutions and the Samson standard at samsonequipment.com. Also want to thank our sponsor, Cerberus Strength. If you're in the market for the highest quality strength and conditioning gear and equipment, be sure to check out cerberusstrength.com and use promo code strength_game to receive an extra 10% off your next order. And this week's episode, I am joined by a friend of mine, Coach Sean Fantuzzi. Sean is a strength coach at Lifetime Athletic in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. Prior to coaching in the private sector, Fantuzzi spent the majority of his coaching career in the collegiate realm, with his most recent stop as an assistant coach at the University of North Dakota from 2016 to 2019. He came to North Dakota after a 2-year stint as an assistant coach at Loyola University in Maryland. Fantuzzi started his coaching career at his alma mater, interning with the Penn State strength conditioning department from 2011 to 2013. And from there, he went on to serve as a graduate assistant strength coach at St. Francis University in Pennsylvania before returning to Penn State briefly as a volunteer coach. Sean is very active as a coach and strength athlete himself. He's dabbled in both powerlifting and CrossFit and has competed locally in both strength sports throughout his time. I'm excited to have him on the show today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Coach Sean Fantuzzi. What's going on, everybody? Today, I've got a good friend of mine, former across the river kind of colleague back when we were both at Loyola. We crossed paths a lot of times. I got Coach Sean Fantuzzi on. What's going on today, dude?
Not much, man. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
No, man, I'm excited. We bounced around a lot of ideas before I even kicked this off. And because I know you had a podcast going for a while too, had some great guests on. So I'm excited to finally kind of get you on the other end of the mic, on the other side of the video a little bit, and share your story a little bit more.
Absolutely. It's that was a short-lived season 1 of the Barbell Nerds podcast, but it was a blast. We had some pretty cool people on there, and learned and took away a lot of stuff.
No, I enjoyed listening to it and sharing and picking each other's brains when we both kind of were at the same point trying to launch these things. So it's cool to finally catch up a little bit and see what you got going on. So, hey, we'll start a little bit in the beginning for some other people that may not know you quite so well. How'd you really get started in the strength game? Like, what sports did you play growing up, and kind of leading into what you currently do strength sports wise, training wise now?
I think one of the first recollections as I look back over the years, I was very big on being on a playground as a kid. Whether it be the monkey bars, just running, playing tag, jumping over, just obstacles. I went rollerblading. I tried to do a whole bunch of different things. Not necessarily like true team sport, although basketball and primarily baseball were the two team sports I did play. But I tried to be pretty active. I rode my bike up and down the neighborhood, tried to go wherever I could. And being outside was always like that happy place for me. Whether or not that translated into me becoming a strength and conditioning coach, I like to consider that, but I don't know. That's just me being, an athlete at all times.
There you go. Yeah, I can think dabbling in a little bit of everything. It's hard to kind of same way for me, like pinpoint exactly what it was, because there's a lot of things that kind of in your athletic background or like what you kind of enjoy doing, being outside or getting on the playground, whatever it is, that really, I think it all contributes to it, but it's hard to like really grasp unless there was like something that really shook your whole world upside down. So was there anything like, because I know from your alma mater, you were starting to intern at Penn State and everything, but when you went to college initially, did you know that you wanted to be a strength coach or anything, or was there anything that kind of piqued your interest that this was even a viable option as a career?
Not in the first 3 years, that's for sure. I started to take a couple kinesiology classes because obviously, like being active, I was playing club sports whenever I was there. I was doing some pickup basketball, playing baseball as best I could, winning some intramural softball championships. And to this day, anytime I see a Penn State intramural championship shirt, that's a shared brotherhood right there. I will forever be at peace with my intramural championships. 4 at Penn State, 4, holding that very high on the list of accolades. Anyway, my senior year, I would probably say it was the most impactful for my career. I was a skinny little dweeb, I would like to say, whenever I was like in high school and maybe even the first year or two of college. But then I started to find the weight room. I started to find some success, basic general stuff you see on T Nation or Muscle and Fitness magazine, like the basic stuff. And it worked. And I started to fall in love with going to the gym on a regular basis. And then my roommate at the time, who I grew up with, basically, he played basketball at Penn State as a walk-on. And I kind of found out about one of his coaches, the strength and conditioning coach. And he told me a little bit about him, kind of how he develops training programs for in an individualistic way, kind of suiting whatever he needed or from what back at the time those athletes at the time needed. So I started to question a little bit more. Started to like pay attention to what was going on in strength and conditioning, I guess, for what I thought was strength and conditioning, until he finished his final game. And then I didn't want there to be a conflict of interest. I was living with the kid. So I then went to the strength coach at the time and be like, hey, I've heard nothing but good things. Can I just shadow you for the rest of the year and just kind of see like what you do on a daily basis? Sure. As long as you don't mind helping out, cleaning the weight room, all that good stuff, restocking the shelves, typical intern stuff. All right, done. The remainder of that year was probably 2 months of me being the cleanup kid, restocking the fridge, everything like that, which was awesome. I actually super enjoyed it because I got to spend time learning from almost professional basketball players, both male and female on the women's basketball side. And they were coming off Big Ten championships. So I got to be around some really high quality athletes and some people that didn't mind teaching me the ropes. Fast forward 2 years later, I then took a graduate assistant position at St. Francis, which is just outside of State College, Pennsylvania itself. A couple other stops on the way were Loyola, where you and I kind of work together. And then the very tropical University of North Dakota, for which I thank you for.
Yeah, those are definitely some interesting stops. And yeah, our careers kind of intertwined back and forth. I mean, between similar stops, different waypoints, even like bouncing around coaches. We've worked for different like sport coaches along the way too, which is, it's kind of crazy to see all the things that have happened and how back and forth our careers have kind of been able to at least like reconnect on a good basis. So no, it's awesome. I think what you were saying, everything too, like when you first started off, like as much as people don't want to talk about internships and being free and like the cleanup and all the restock and everything like that, I think that was, as much it was weird and it was much as it like felt like a pain in the ass sometimes, and like you really want to do something. No, we had no idea what we were doing. So just being surrounded by those people and just watching it and like feeling like an appreciation for it, even though we had no idea what was going on or what the first thing to do. Like if that coach left and they were just like, do whatever you want, I'd be frozen. But it felt so cool to kind of just be a part of it and see how that like environment was actually working. What
Oh,
kind of
it changed my ideology on just training in general. I was like, oh, so like normal gym etiquette, leg day, upper body day, push pull, whatever, shoulders, arms, cool. Like that's training. And then I go and like intern with a basketball program where the guys are lifting 4 days a week with some conditioning and hill sprints on top. I'm like, and they're doing like a upper body push with a lower body pull so that they don't get fatigued over time in that particular day. I was like, oh my God, what have I been missing? Like, why isn't this the stuff I'm learning? Why isn't this the stuff that's in textbooks or on the internet? And it took time. Now it's all over the place. Now you can find it on any in TikTok, Instagram, anywhere, on the good ones.
All the good ones, yeah. But yeah, just being surrounded by kind of quality people, quality coaches, athletes, like just a good program in general, you're going to pick up a lot of things. And especially in the very beginning, like when you're really just taking everything in and you're eager to learn as much as possible. I think that's a really integral part of your career, whether you want to be in it or not. And from there, like you said, you went to like a GA ship, like what was some of the changes from that, like when you go from actually just learning and taking everything in to actually starting to lead stuff? Because I think that's where I think stuff is solidified at that point in time, where you're not just the follower, like you actually have to lead a session at this point.
It was very nerve-wracking at first. I will say that. I was, like I said, I was lucky enough to be with Penn State, and technically I was there for just under 3 years as an intern. I was also part of like a paid assistant role here and there that allowed me to travel with women's basketball as needed, which was super cool. But then as I grew within that internship program, my body of work spread out to the other sports as well. So I got to see how other sports trained, how other coaches looked after their athletes as well, how they spoke about different methodologies in season, off season, and everything in between. So when I went to St. Francis, my teams were cross country, men's and women's tennis, men's and women's golf, and I also assisted with football. So not a whole lot of programming wise to do with football right off the bat. I was just kind of like there. I would kind of help with a couple racks as I got acquainted with everybody. But with the other sports, like I was the guy. So I took all my old intern notes and I tried to develop the absolute best program that was going to be the most sports specific, most athletic changing program absolutely possible in their very first month there. And everything went to shit after the first hour. I was like, what am I doing? And that was the best thing that could have happened to me. Absolute best thing. I humbled myself a little bit, but it was cool. It was cool. I learned, I failed. I tried to reason with coaches. Lord knows that never works out well in my favor or anybody's favor, but it was cool. It was a really cool learning experience, and I wouldn't have changed it for the world. But being in front of those athletes for the first time, it was also very empowering. Nothing quite beats the feeling of getting called coach when someone walks up to you and says, "Hey, coach, what are we doing for our next sprint day?" I was like, "Oh, I got called coach. That's pretty cool." So that was always one of the coolest things as being a strength and conditioning coach. Sorry if that went off a little tangent or if I answered your question or anything like that. So.
No, I like that. I didn't think of it like that, because like you really, when you're doing a GA, like you're doing a grad assistant position, you really don't have time to kind of like sit back and think. Your head's in whatever classes you got going on, you're programming for teams, you're trying to train yourself, you've got teams that you're working with all the time. You never really have any time to reflect on what kind of job you're doing. So that's a really cool thing to like realize, that there's a big shift that you go from being like intern to being called coach, and you're actually empowered to lead a team. And even if you're in that role, like it's it's just hard to remember like what the feeling was like when it shifted.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I know it's a great feeling, but it's a lot of responsibility that gets thrown at you too. And at such a pivotal time in your career, when you feel like imposter syndrome is at its ultimate peak. And I know that never leaves you, but in that moment, you're like, I don't know how I'm allowed to be in charge of these people.
Exactly. Like, do you remember the first time like one of your athletes called you coach? Because I do.
I don't know if I can pinpoint the very first time it was, but I do remember when like I remember being in the front, like at the whiteboard, explaining a lift, and everybody like had their eyes on me and was like paying attention. I was like,
Mhm.
whoa, I really can't fuck up right now. If I say something, they're gonna follow it like to a T. But yeah, that feeling. I mean, if you remember exactly that first point in time, someone said it to you.
I'm pretty sure it was it because it was like a really monumental thing for someone to like do. I think it's just because it we had a decent sized weight room when I was in St. Francis. It was 12 racks, was decent, like almost a big hallway looking type of gym. And one of my golfers like screamed over from the other end, like pretty much, Coach Sean, when are we going to start? When are we going to start squatting? And I was like, huh. I just don't know if I ever absorbed it more than that moment. And I have no idea why it was. It just it felt natural. Like it was just a natural thing for him to say. And it just meant a lot. So I pulled him aside after. I was like, I'm pretty sure that was one of the coolest things. It's so simple and so small, but it just felt, it was really cool. It was a really
And
cool moment in the career.
yeah, that the payoff from that is more than anything else I think you're going to feel, especially remembering that first time. It makes you want to invest even more into what you're doing and everything that you're doing to prepare those athletes and the relationships you have with them. And I think that's why coach is such a hard word to kind of like pinpoint and define, because it means so many different things and it means so much different things to different people.
Yeah.
And in your time, like all that stuff is great, but you've transitioned a lot of times from either different aspects of coaching, different places in collegiate sports, and that's primarily like where you spent the majority of your career. But now, like you've taken a big shift, obviously moving closer to home with your wife and everything, transitioning more to working with a lot of general population in the private sector. What's been like that shift like? Because we talked about it a little bit, the team atmosphere is a little bit different even if you have a group setting with private sector or your clients. But what are some of maybe the bigger lesser known things that have shifted for you as a coach working with these kind of athletes instead?
I would like to say that there's probably more similarities than there are differences. Case in point, I never really stopped treating the people that were right in front of me like athletes. I still call them athletes to this day. I have a couple people that are like, I have a couple clients, athletes that are over the age of 65. I have a guy who came off an Achilles tear that like week 1 of COVID playing tennis, couldn't get couldn't get surgery until June of that year because of the quarantine. Um, and he is now playing pickleball, which is quite possibly the coolest sport ever. 5 or 6 days a week. He is running now. He trap bar deadlifted 405. Like I'm lucky to be around very, very cool people here, but it's a testament to how they take care of their bodies as well. It's more like an athlete than some of my college kids that would eat chicken wings before game day, on game day. Sorry, not before game day, on game day. But I digress in that sense. No, there's a lot more similarities than there are differences. One of the biggest differences I thought was just now owning my own kind of book of business. That was a whole nother route that I had to learn because I had no idea what I was doing in that sense. We would have team meetings here at where I work, which is Lifetime Athletic in King of Prussia. And all these financial numbers would come up on the board. And I'm just like, I know I work on commission. but I know nothing about all these numbers, sales, revenue, total revenue delivered. Like it was just jargon to me. All I knew is like if I had hours on my schedule where I was in front of people, I was going to give them my best effort to either fix whatever pain that they were in, or show them how to train effectively so that they could be an athlete for life, or always an athlete, however you want to phrase that term. It was always one of the things I wanted to do, is train people like the athletes they either were or should be.
No, I love that. I think that's great. I think that's the same as what we were talking about before with coach it, like the word coach being pretty interchangeable, and it can mean a lot of different things for people. I think everybody in their own right is an athlete in some sort. And that's awesome to hear, like how you kind of approach them, whether it's what their goal is to still make them a version of that athlete, or what they were previously as a competitive athlete. How can you still make them athletic in their newfound goals or what they'd like to achieve? And I do want to touch on that stuff because we talked a little bit about before, like kind of taking the fluff work out of what you normally see in a lot of these private sectors or on social media or anything like that. But I want to stay on the topic, like what you said, like learning the business side a little bit. And obviously, like maybe not so much for you where you're not like owning the gym, or you're really having to cook the books all the time, but it is important for you to understand that if you work off commission, and just trying to figure out what all those pieces, so that you can kind of make a good living for yourself and everything. Like, how have you kind of, as you've stayed in this side of the profession, the private sector, like try to catch up a little bit and work on learning some more of these financial things or the business side to help, I mean, you financially, or just maybe your coaching ability or marketing for yourself?
I think one of the biggest things is like know your worth and trust your worth. If you are providing like a good service, and I this is one of the reasons why I thank my years as a strength and conditioning coach. I feel like I've given myself a leg up on a lot of just people that come in to our staff, or not even our staff, just personal training in general, where they're either just out of college or they're maybe just worked as a personal trainer. Like I've been in front of some pretty high quality individuals throughout high athletic performance. So I'm going to use those aspects of training those athletes, because more often than not, they have legitimate compensation patterns. And I've seen a lot of them in the general population. They just don't really do anything about it. So now once I start to change their compensation patterns, or try to load some other, not compensations, but load their body so that they have to figure it out, or the body has to continuously adapt to a stimulus. Talk about my general pop people, like they start to see a lot of progress really quickly, which is really cool. And then a lot of times their pain, whatever, their strength levels, it goes away. I feel like even here, I work with a couple golfers specifically, and more often than not, all you got to do with a golfer that doesn't really hit the ball very well is get them a little stronger. And chances are they're going to start hitting golf balls farther than their buddies, whether or not they're 3 beers in on the golf course or not. Thankfully, I have a pretty good reputation at the gym I work at now that allows me to do so. Again, I don't know if I answered your question. I kind of ramble a lot on these things. But as far as like, reverting back to the business side of things, that was the toughest thing to learn. But knowing where you value your service, this is, as much as it's hard to say, it's still a customer service type of industry. We're providing a service. So knowing that, yes, I can give someone an hour of my time to kind of help fix a couple certain things. And then if they keep coming back to you wanting something, be like, okay, I understand. But just like a plumber, just like an electrician, like your services are valuable. You should be able to stand up in front of someone and say, my rate is such and such. Like, and I own that. You have to believe it in order to say it in front of someone. If that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. I think what you were saying, like knowing your worth and really trusting it, I think that's huge. And I think like college strength conditioning, we don't really think about it because it's a fixed salary or it's a fixed contract. If you're working with football or basketball, or you're at a higher level, like tied into a sport coach, where you actually do have a contract versus most people in the profession, like maybe you're hourly, like as a part-time, which is, please get out of that as fast as possible if you're in college. But if you're salary, like the worst thing you can do is look at how many hours you work and then backtrack and see that and remember how many degrees you have and how many certifications and all the money you spent to realize that you're getting paid $3 an hour. That's enough to hurt you. But I
Not
think
only that, like think about all the, not just the certifications, the CSC, the CSCS or the NSCA conferences, the CSCCA conferences, all those other things that you kind of do on the side. You go there, you come back, you implement all the stuff that you just learned, and nothing happens from a pay raise perspective. Like I just learned all this cool new stuff with like Gym Aware or Tendo or what's the big one? Catapult. We just got this whole new Catapult system, and I learned how to use it in like a whole weekend seminar, and then we implement it, and then I'm doing so much more work, and there's nothing else extra coming in besides more work and a couple more numbers that don't really make a whole lot of sense right off the bat.
right. I know. And I think that's the hard part with college, because a lot of people, and we talked about it a little bit before, because there's always like a college strength coach's idea of maybe getting out, and there's like someone that's been in college before that still like kind of misses certain aspects of college, like both of us, like specifically. And I think it's a good cue. I think it's a good thing to be able to experience both sides of it, because like you said, you got out of it and you realize like you like the athletic side, you like working with people that are motivated, whether it's like to win a championship or just be really good at pickleball, what doesn't matter. But there is an important thing that if you're in college that you don't really see like what your worth is, because someone already puts a fixed salary on what it is you do. And we don't have fixed hours and we don't have a fixed task. Like I think most strength coaches understand that if something needs to get done, we're going to do it. Like if it takes 10 hours, if it takes 1 hour, we're going to continue to go to conferences. We're going to continue to go do things to make ourselves better, because that's important to us intrinsically. But there isn't a lot of extrinsic like motivation or bonuses or anything that's really tied back into it. And at the end of the day, that's probably why there's a big exodus for people leaving college, because people want to live their life eventually and realize that there's a ticking clock for college strength conditioning. And that's why I think that's a great thing that you've been able to do. And I've tried to do it in some aspects, is to really understand what your worth is. If someone approaches you to do a conference, someone approaches you to like speak to someone or write programs, like you should probably have a good idea what you want to charge them.
Yeah.
And understand what that is, because what is that time worth you outside of it? It's hard to negotiate that in college because you're pretty replaceable. But if everybody approaches you outside of it, it's nice to be able to say, hey, this is how I value myself, and stick to it and really own that. I think that's important. And I think that's something that college side can definitely take from the private sector for sure.
I think it's interesting that you bring up a lot of like things to do with just being able to objectively measure someone and a coach. I know strength and conditioning has always struggled with that. It's something that Will and I have brought up on our podcast way back when, a number of occasions. It's still very much a gray area. But I hope more and more people are having that conversation on how to, so that we can figure out how to progress the field. I think once that happens, you'll be able to see a flourish more of people going back to strength and conditioning, because I think it'd be a little bit more of a fairer assessment of progress.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's why you see a lot of strength coaches now too. And I don't know if it's just because of COVID or because of everything that's been going on with people leaving the profession, or just entrepreneurs like kind of just being strength coaches wanting to do more. But you see a lot more people try to like kind of promote things on the side. And
Strength
like,
coaches want that NIL deal too, man.
I know. And that's what's crazy too. I wonder if that was a part of the reason why a lot of this stuff is spiked up too, because we do give a lot of, like, rightfully so, we get a lot of power to the student athletes. And I think the NIL was good, but I think it was way too broad of terms. And it definitely did not help any of the support staff that are going to deal with this stuff. And sport coaches already were making enormous amounts of money for the amount of stuff they do. And I'm not here to argue that, but if we're going to move the needle for both of them, it'd be nice to do the same thing and reciprocate it for the support staff. And I think that's why you see more coaches doing things outside of their institution.
Mhm.
I mean, like we did it, like you did your podcast and everything too. And even if it doesn't bring in any sort of monetary value at that current time, I think it brings a lot of other value. But it's nice to know your worth, like stick to that, and understand that if there is an opportunity to have an NIL deal as a college strength coach or a private coach, like there needs to be some opportunities for that. And I think that is why people are trying to seek out these other little side quests in addition to their coaching role. But it's hard to balance that, as we both know, with the demanding hours that come with college.
Yeah, very much so.
Hey, so you talked a little bit about it, like with the objective side and like how we kind of define success in coaching. And it is definitely a gray area with strength coach, especially when we look at maybe administration or supervisors not really knowing how to either quantify what would be a good coach versus a bad coach. And those are tended to be the ones that are hiring and firing as well. But more than that, because that's a topic that could last for hours. Have you, in your opinion, seen that there's a different way that you define success, maybe as a private sector coach versus a college sector coach? Or do you think no matter what, like a successful coach kind of translates depending on, like, regardless of what place you're working at?
Again, it's more of a gray area type of thing. However, I know from conversations that I've had in the past, the ugly truth is I do think injuries need to play a factor into the success of a strength and conditioning coach. More specifically, non-contact soft tissue injuries. I think those can be more than limited from a sound training program. I think that was one of the biggest things from my takeaways of my time as a strength coach. That was one of the things that I think it was Molly Benetti, and she was either on the CVAPS podcast with Jay, or she was on Bartholomew's Art of Coaching podcast. I can't remember. My apologies, Molly, if you're listening to this. But she would bring up some really good points on like how we can move forward as a profession by objectively measuring a few things. And that was one of the ones that stuck with me, because it was always one of the things that like I took a lot of pride in, keeping my athletes very healthy, even when. So one of the things that I would do as a tracking system of quote unquote success with my basketball program at North Dakota, I would look at shooting percentage, second half minus the first half, free throw percentage, second half minus first half, and trying to see like when you're quote tired, what the difference would look like. I then looked at points plus or minus, or points second half minus first half. And then any game that we went into overtime, I try to see like what would be our winning percentage in that sense. Sure enough, the year that we actually went to the NCAA tournament, we were the only team in the country that were 4-0 in overtime. 87% of our games, we shot a better percentage in the second half than the first half. And I'm pretty sure above 80%, we shot a better free throw percentage in the second half too. So that told me we at least didn't tire out quickly towards the end of the season. We were still staying strong. We were still in shape. And anytime a coach would, like you mentioned, we look out of shape, I could show them that. Be like, well, stats don't lie, right? This is what you guys do. As far as being on the private sector side, it's tough, but like You relate it to the athlete that's in front of you. You relate it to the client that's in front of you. Like, are we trending in the right direction with some of their goals? Is the body fat percentage coming down? Is the skeletal muscle mass going up? How are the energy levels, like daily wellness questionnaire type of things? Are the energy levels going up? Are you seeing your bicep vein? Because that's kind of cool. Are the strength levels going up? Are your other different metrics throughout your general fitness, your 500-meter row, your 20 cal bike sprint, like things, or maybe your 2-mile run, other different things that you can kind of benchmark and test throughout their time as a client or an athlete. I think those are kind of, you can check the boxes as long as those things are still relating to the athletes staying away from the doctor. Like, that's one of the biggest things. I had this conversation the other day, and if you envision like a doctor's office, do you think health? No. Like, no, I think people do, though. And that's the problem with your general population society today. If you look at a doctor's office, I think sick care. Why don't we try to bend the needle or why don't we try to point the needle in the direction of healthcare, which is the gymnasiums, your CrossFit gyms, your Globo gyms, your Orange Theories. I don't care how you get your fitness. Go, excuse my language, go fucking get your fitness and then use it outside. Like, the 2 or 3 hours at the gym that you spend a week should not be the only activity you do throughout the week. Use it outside. Go play some softball. Go play some pickleball. It's going to be worth it long term anyway.
No, that's a great point too. I think that would serve the purpose for just, off-season athletes for college athletics. Like, I think that's huge. And I get a lot of flack from some of my coaches, I think, that don't quite understand, or the ones that, like, if you ask them what their hobby is, it's exactly what their sport is, like, that they're coaching. And that to me is a super big red flag, because I remember having conversations with coaches in the past where they're like, well, what do you want to do as soon as like our last game's done for the season? Because that's when I constitute like the next 52 weeks looks like. Whenever we lose the last game of the year until championship next year. Mm-hmm. Like, well, what do you want to do? I was like, I don't give a shit what they do for the next month. It's like, as long as they stay active, they can do whatever they want. Here's some guidelines and here's some helpful advice. I'd rather them not pick up a stick if they play lacrosse. I'd rather not you get on the ice if you play hockey. If you play basketball, now just play soccer for a month. Do something different, like go outside and hike. And I've seen some coaches that are like, no, are you serious? I was like, no, I'm dead serious. And they get super pissed, but I'm never going to change. I'm never going to change my angle on that. And I think that plays an even bigger role when we talk about like athletes that are general population or aren't working towards like a team goal, maybe in like outside of like an intramural aspect or rec aspect. I mean, those things are great. And I think that's why more people should kind of go to organized sports like that. But there's so much value in just being outside or going on a hike or going on the water, whatever it ends up being. So that's awesome that's another big piece that you preach to like your clients, because it's a weird area since I've never worked in it, but I've always thought of, I don't know how well I'm doing it, because my goal as like a private, like personal trainer would be, I want them to not need me in 2 years, but there goes my paycheck.
So when I first started here, that's one of the things that I would also say to my former boss when he was here. I was like my goal is to get them out of pain and then teach them to not need me. And he goes, well, what happens if their goals change? And I didn't have a good enough answer. I was like, oh shit, that's a good point. Like, what if one of your lacrosse players comes to you afterwards and said, hey, I want to personal train me for a half marathon in 6 months. Boom, you're training him for 6 months. He's like, okay, now I want to get back into lacrosse. Like, can you train me for that too? And you're like, oh, I guess I still got more work to do.
That's a good point. And I think that is probably where I don't see the shift as much, or where maybe I'm naive to it since I haven't worked in that private sector. But I think to your point, most of the people that you work with are, I don't know if they're attracted to you or you get those type of clients, or this is kind of how you structure your coaching, is they're goal oriented. So even they're not someone that's going to come in and say, hey, I just want to be healthy, because those are the ones that you teach them kind of the basics. You teach them basic nutrition, you teach them basic lifting patterns, and like, here's a program that you can replicate for the next 30 years. If you need me in a decade, definitely hit me up. But I think it sounds like that a lot of the ones you get come in with a hard set goal, and you're able to kind of like test, show them progress, and their goals are ever changing. It's not just a destination. They're worried about like what they're doing in that moment. Does that kind of seem like what the type maybe that you're attracted to, or maybe that's how you structure their initial like client like program?
Yes and no. I would say for the people that I have worked with for a while. So I had my longest tenured client just before I guess I've been training him technically since 2019 when I started. It was November of 2019 and I started August. He's the best. He's the general manager of a Chick-fil-A in Philadelphia. So I get some pretty cool coupons. But I started training with him, and honestly, I don't really do a whole lot. He tends to go off his programming a lot, but all he wants to do is like make as little decisions outside of work as possible. And I completely get it. Like, he is bombarded with questions and decisions to make as a general manager of a chain restaurant, and you don't want to make a decision in the gym. Like, I get it. I will program for you. I will train you, and we'll just be super savage. And I gotta admit, I take a little bit of, he has some mobility goals that he wants to go for. He doesn't really have necessarily some strength goals. He just wants to always be able to deadlift 225. He's like, I don't really care how much I deadlift. I just want to be able to do that for like 5 to 10 reps. Cool. And we play around with different styles of deadlifting. We play around with different things. Every now and then he raised his hand the other day to put something up on the shelf, and he felt a tweak in his shoulder. I was like, your shoulder's fine. Like, we just did like handstands against the wall the other day. Your shoulder's absolutely fine. But seeing these people that we've accomplished goals with change and alter their goals and come back, it's pretty cool to see the amount of trust that they're not putting in me. And I think that was one of the biggest things that I am able to do with, I'm lucky to do with a lot of people I work with. The people that I work with right now, they've been working with me for a while. I think I only have, of my newly acquired clients, I think there's 2 in the past 2 months. Everyone else has been at least 3, which is cool. It means we're setting them up for long-term success, both inside and outside the gym. Some of them are working in other aspects of the gym itself. We have a team of nutrition coaches. We have a team of Pilates instructors, making sure like other types of things like mobility, core strength, everything like that is taken care of. Their eating habits are on point, as bad as they are. I wouldn't even call them habits. It's like frustrating. But yeah, it's a testament to them and their consistency being able to get into the gym on a regular basis, so that they can see the value in that hour to hour and a half.
No, that's awesome. I think that's cool too, that to hear about how their goals change and all the different type of clients that you actually have coming back for the long term, whereas you don't really have the opportunity to even take on a lot of new ones because you're retaining so many people. But it's cool to see like all the different approaches that you have to take. And I'm sure that a lot of your experience in the college sector and working at different places, different universities and everything has probably helped a lot with the different approaches that you have to take with your athletes and your clients at this point too. But what came about from this, like, I wonder for you, you talked a little bit about like testing metrics and everything. And since you're not working with an athlete, or you're not working with a team where it's like, my goal is to be this, I want to win this championship as a conference. Like I want to win this individually. I want to be able to perform this. Like everybody's squatting, so I want to like get X number on my squat, whatever it ends up being. How do you do you have a baseline set of metrics to show like progress with them? Like you said, like the 500-meter row or like a mile run, that maybe across the board, you're always going to kind of use a few of those with your clients and athletes, just so that at least like, hey, even if your goal is just to be healthy and learn something, we're going to track this, because I think that this will show you that we're on the right path, even if your path isn't like really hard to find.
Yeah, there's a few that I really choose from that I like a lot. The 500-meter row is a very simple, more so aerobic, and I would call it more aerobic power output, because I even did mine the other day and it was 131. I was actually pretty proud of that. So good for me. But I do that with men and women. I like a 10-minute Airdyne test for like maximum calories. It's much more aerobic, and it really kind of sucks unless you just close your eyes and go. It's less pounding on the joints than your general mile on like a runner or something. I picked this one from Cam Davidson when I was working with him at Penn State with hockey. We used to do a farmer carry with his hockey kids, and what they would do is they would get like the farmer carry handlebars and get double body weight in their hands and walk. I think it was like 30. I think it was 30 feet, 30 meters, 30 feet, 30 meter, 30 yards, something along those lines. It was 30 something. So I kind of dumbed it down a little bit for, or scaled it down a little bit for general population people. We have a trap bar. I would load for women, body weight and a half, for men, double body weight. And we would walk. We were lucky enough to have a 30-meter turf. If you could walk from one end to the other end with that in your hands, cool. You now have a strong core. And a lot of times when you get general population clients that come in that say, oh, my doctor says I need to strengthen my core. It's like, okay, what does he mean? Like, the amount of people that say I want a stronger core is astronomical. What does that mean? I think that bridge there needs to be built up or fixed, because there's a drastic disconnect between doctors saying you need a strong core and the athlete or the client saying, I don't know what that means. So that's my definition of a strong core: 30 yards or 30 meters, double body weight for men, body weight and a half for women on a trap bar. I'm a big fan of the deadlift, trap bar or barbell. I don't care. If you can lift your body weight for 5 reps, that's kind of my gold standard. Anything else, awesome. We're getting stronger. That's bonus. Anything less, we need some work to do strength-wise. And if you can't hang on to a pull-up bar for more than 5 seconds, you're either really, really weak or really, really big. Either way, we need to address something. Those are like my big ones.
No, that's awesome. I think those are definitely a lot different than what you would see a lot of other people doing within like the general population, private sector. Well, I don't care. I don't know what to call it. So sorry.
It's okay. There are days where I don't even know. I work in like a Globo gym type of thing, but it does not feel like a Globo gym at all. Like
no.
we have like 2 floors. One floor is like your main fitness area with you go straight ahead. There's like a jungle gym looking thing. There's a couple of selectorized pieces of machines. We have cables, dumbbells all the way up to 150s. We have the more cardio pieces that you can understand. And then on your 3rd floor, you have turf, 5 Olympic platforms with Alico barbells, curved runners, ski ergs, rowers, like an entire area with 8 heavy bags for boxing. I'm like, okay, this is more than your like typical Globo gym. It's not the one you see in dodgeball.
No, yeah, you have pretty much all the tools. It's definitely a different setup. but yeah, I mean, all the testing metrics, everything you said about training, like these clients, athletes, like actually like athletes is awesome. And like you talked about it before, like you have so many tools. You told me too, like there's 32 personal trainers that are there, and like yoga instructors. You have all the equipment, you have everything accessible for people. You just need them to be consistent, kind of define their goals, and then just kind of work towards it all the time. But from a coaching aspect, like normally, like when you get to the college sector, and it's different at every place, but you're getting people that maybe their training age is slightly increased, or they have at least a need for strength and development. Yeah, a lot of times it's zero.
Let's be honest.
But the difference is they are forced to be there. So whether they like it or not, they're going to be there. So with that said, like some of the complex movements, or like some of these like more like integrative things that you have to like really sit down, teach, cue, make sure that people are prepared for it. Have you noticed a difference, like that you had to change your approach a little bit working with these like general population? Like obviously it's different with everybody, but more importantly too, does it change a lot when you're working maybe one-on-one versus small groups or teams or with different clients at all?
It does from a desire perspective. And I think that's one of the things that's the biggest difference between me training at the college sector and me training at the private sector. Um, I was actually a big fan of the Olympic lifts back when I was a college strength coach. I would get away from them depending on the time of the year or what needed to be the priority. But I always thought the coordination of learning a new movement as complex as the clean or the snatch was good for just the brain, not necessarily for the musculoskeletal system itself, but for the brain. Learning something new was fun. Um, and with my clients now, like I don't just give them cleans and snatches just because they have to do that for increased power, increased coordination. Like, excuse me. More often than not, they either see me or my wife doing it in our Instagrams, and sometimes they'll ask like, "Hey, can you teach me how to do that? Hey, like, how do you do that?" It's like I can teach you if you want to, and it's just a matter of do you have I teach now I teach top down. I used to teach bottom up, but I teach top down, especially with the clean, just from getting into this position is a lot tougher for your general athlete or your general population client than a regular athlete because they never really get to this position ever. So it's not a thing that they're really exposed to very often. So just exposing those tissues to that position is what takes the most time. But from like if they want to learn that, I could say something along the lines of, well, it could do this, this, and that. I think they're a lot of fun. Why don't we try them for like a 3-week segment? We'll spend 15 minutes a day on them, 10, 15 minutes a day, twice a week, and kind of we'll see where our progress lies. If it's fun and they want to continue, awesome. If not, we'll just kind of phase them out a little bit. No harm, no foul. We'll adjust and still add some sort of um, triple extension movement in wherever they feel appropriate.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to kind of introduce people to it without kind of forcing it on them.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, like we said, like we jokingly say with athletes, like you're forced to do what the program is. Like this is like you don't know better. This is for your own good kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, we kind of give a little bit more leeway once they understand the program and expectations, and we know a little bit more what they need. But definitely, yeah, with like your general population, like working with those clients, like if someone's really interested in doing that, you might even get someone that is like, I just want you to teach me Olympic lifts and then I'll be on my way. Or you might get someone like you said, where they see you performing it and maybe they like it or they want to add it in a little bit, but maybe after a while they're like, I don't know if this is for me. But that's a big aspect that I think anybody can take away, like regardless of what like sector you work in, is getting the athletes, getting your clients to really buy into it and like enjoy the process of it a little bit too. And you could get carried away with it on both sides, but I think that's a great approach to kind of tease them with it a little bit and then
Mhm.
see if they actually want to be committed to it, because at the end of the day, like, they're paying you for it. So if that's what they want to do, you're going to have to find a way to kind of get it done at the same time.
I'm technically an employee at that point. I'm basically their assistant in strength and fitness. Like, how could I help you? Um, as we said before, it's still a customer service industry. I still feel like I'm at the desire. Like, we have a menu of movements. Like, I'll help you pick. Like, okay, for your single leg unilateral movement, like let's try a step up. Step up seems pretty cool. Okay, next time we go, let's get that step up, or let's add a little bit more flavor to it. Let's maybe do a weighted step up or a high box step up. Um, if that goes well, maybe the next week we switch it over to like a lunge or a split squat, and we just kind of progress. More often than not, we regress so that we can progress. And that was one of the bigger things that I learned um, in strength and conditioning that I've taken into private sector now. Is like, a lot of times you take your movements, you regress them by, let's say, adding stability. Single leg RDL, grab a dumbbell, try to go as heavy as possible on a single leg RDL, and you probably only get to 60, maybe 65 pounds on a dumbbell. But like, let's put the other hand down on something stable, like a chair or a bench. And now instantly it's like, okay, now I have 2 points of contact on the ground. I don't have to worry about balance at all. Let's see if that 100, see if I could do it for like 3 reps. That's how I'm getting like good strength numbers, by giving them a little bit of security with their balance. They don't need to like, I don't know. This comes back to the Bosu ball thing. Like, you don't need to continuously work on balance if you dose your balance with strength. You're going to get more balanced. Um, Sorry, I just went off on a rant again. I do that.
No,
My
that's
wife, my
good.
wife gets pissed at me. We'll be talking about something related to Ozarks or something on TV, and I just go into a rant. So
No, that's what this show's about anyway. So anytime there's a rabbit hole to go down, just take the tunnel. No, I think that's a good point. Regressing everything so you can actually make some progress. None of the stuff we're doing, none of this training, everything is going to be completely linear, and
Mhm.
that's where a lot of faults are going to end up. Where you're just going to crash and burn. And stuff's going to get stale. It's going to get boring. You're going to overload the system. Like, you need to take a step back, take a different approach, change the stimulus a little bit, change the intent. And like, that's usually what things call for. I mean, that's why we deload, that's why we unload events. That's why we take time off during different points of the season, so that you can actually continue to make progress at some points in time. And that definitely goes hand in hand with movement patterns and everything too. I mean, I know my athletes get pissed off because we'll do probably 20 different versions of like dumbbell bench, and they get so confused, like, well, I did this with one, like alternating at the top, holding this way. It's like, well, maybe you're gonna have to start up at the bottom now and figure out where you have to start with those weights. It's like, I don't really care. It's a different stimulus. You have to think about it differently. You have to approach it differently, and you have to figure out what you can handle. That's enough for me. That's the easiest way to not overcomplicate it and actually see some progress. So, hey, we talked a little bit about kind of you doing some Olympic lifts, especially like with your wife and training. So what are you kind of doing with your coaching now? And we talked a little bit off mic too. You don't normally train at Lifetime. So where's your go-to place, and what's kind of the reason behind training somewhere else?
So I don't train at the gym I work at. It's kind of one of those don't shit where you eat type of things. Typically, if I will work out there every now and then, especially if I'm crunched for time throughout the day. But it's like I'm always it's hard to unplug from work mode while I'm there. I'm either kind of like looking for shit to either clean up, or even like some member comes up to me in the middle of like some of my conditioning and tries to have a conversation. I'm like, headphones in, everybody out, type of thing. So I kind of want to be left alone. So a couple years ago, my wife actually got me into CrossFit. And I've been doing decently at it. By no means am I a professional athlete at it, but it is a lot of fun. And it's taught me a lot of different things, from being able to push my body to a new level. And that's one of the things that I fell in love with, that sort of programming and its simplistic elegancy. Now there are a lot of bastardized CrossFit programs out there. I will say that. Um, but if you really dive down to the simplistics of movement, it's really cool to see a marriage of gymnastic skills, weightlifting, and any sort of monostructural implement like a rower or running or swimming or anything like that. Like those three things in different ways, shapes, and forms intertwined, you're going to get a really good training program out of it. Um, so that's kind of what I dove down. I dove down that rabbit hole hard about 4 years ago, and I'm still doing it today with CrossFit. And this is being recorded early June, not this weekend, but the next weekend. I'll be going with a team of a couple other individuals up to Montreal, Canada, to compete in a international competition, which is kind of cool.
Nice. Well, hey, good luck with that, man. I didn't even know that was in the works.
That was found out last night. The team had been like training together. They qualified for this competition a couple weeks ago, so they had all been training together. And then unfortunately something happened to one of the teammates. He had to bow out, and they're like, "You're in." And I said, "Oh shit."
Hey,
So here I go.
That's a good trip. Hey, that's those are my favorite trips too. To go, there's a purpose behind it, and as soon as you're done training, there's a lot of beers and there's a new area to explore. Those are my favorite types of trips and competitions mixed together.
I've never been to Montreal. I've heard nothing but amazing things about the area. I'm very excited to compete with these individuals, these kids. They're basically like, the oldest kid on the team right now is 26 and I'm 33. So I just hope I don't fall apart. But no, it's gonna be fun. They're really good friends of mine. They're really good friends of my wife and I. We train with them all the time, and they're good people. And all I want to do is help them compete a little bit, which is gonna be a lot of fun.
No, that I have no doubt that'll be a lot of fun. Traveling and getting to do that with friends and family, that's definitely a cool way to do everything. So, hey, so when we talk about it too, more and more, like what really kind of constitutes you wanting to continue to train, and like even now, like you talked about being able to compete, like for you, like where do you kind of find solace in that, and why do you think that's still important or a big part of your life?
Like I said, I've really wanted to be able to find out what I'm truly capable of from an athletic perspective. Like being a kid and doing the jungle gym and doing a jump off the swings as high as I could was always something I prided myself to be the best at, even though it kind of landed me in the hospital a couple times. But if it doesn't kill me, I'll do it again, right? But the biggest thing that kind of keeps me wanting to train, at least at somewhat of a high level for a long period of time, is the notion of always being an athlete. And I can't remember where I heard it first, but I really like this quote and it stuck with me. You shouldn't need any motivation, because one day you're not going to be able to do the things you're capable of doing right now. When I first heard that, I can't remember where I was. I think it was at St. Francis when I either read it or heard it somewhere on a YouTube channel. But that thing stuck with me. Ever since then, I've always wanted to abide by that rule, and learn how to do just awesome shit. Like people say they can't like handstand walk. I have a 50-some-year-old client who's handstand walking, who just learned how to handstand walk. I just learned how to handstand walk over the past year and a half. Now I'm going up and down an obstacle, a ramp onto some stairs. I'm still practicing that. I still suck at it. But learning how to do new things, whether it be athletic things or just things that you've never even thought you could try before, there's nothing wrong with trying a regressed version of what you're doing. Play spike ball till you're 90 years old. I always joke, but I always want to hit. I always want to forever hit cleanup on my summer beer league softball team till I'm like 90 years old. I think that'd be fun to still hit home runs at that age. I think that is really one of the things that keeps me going. Also, the fact that I have an incredibly strong wife and who I think is catching up to me in strength, which is demoralizing, but she keeps me grounded. She keeps me wanting to keep doing more and more. We kind of started our relationship by both being like in a gym. She was an athlete. I was a coach. So that has always been a big part. We want to add a garage gym to our house. We both actually work at Lifetime. We barely see each other throughout the day, but we both are coaches and trainers there, which is really cool. And it helps us identify ourselves as just a couple that enjoys athleticism, and it will never be put on the back burner. Our health and longevity in sport and life in that fitness world will never be put on the back burner because we know we both have each other's best athletic interests at heart.
No, I think that's a great way to put it. And like finding a training partner or finding someone where like you hold each other accountable and like it's enjoyable too, and it's able to keep you healthy, keep you engaged. Like you talked about longevity, like everything you said was like, what can I keep doing for the next 50 years? Like, what can I do pretty much where there's no finish line? Like I want to be able to say yes to going on a hike or going to Montreal on a whim and just basically be ready for anything. And I think that's pretty cool to just kind of be ready for anything that's thrown your way. And that's what I hope a lot of athletes like that are the clients you have now that might have played collegiate sports or only like finished playing high school football. Like I hope they start continuing to keep health and fitness and nutrition and wellness like at the forefront, because I think all those things tie back into what you're capable of doing with the rest of your life. Like it ties back into your relationships, your job, like your family life, everything. I think that has a positive effect on all those things. And I think that's a great way to kind of like summate all that. Awesome, man. Hey, well, like any good training session, we end with a finisher. And because you're CrossFit to the core right now, you're definitely doing overtime because
bring it on.
Running's not in my wheelhouse. I do want to try that. I want to try this.
Do like burpees real quick first.
Yeah, you want to stress test it beforehand if you want to.
No. It's actually funny. I actually like very rarely do I ever throw a burpee actually into a class. I don't like, again, some people bastardize CrossFit programming to the point where all they're doing is just burp like 100 burpees for time. What the fuck? There's no purpose to that. There is actually a purpose to getting on and off the ground efficiently. I had a 76-year-old lady. I timed her how many, because she could not get off the ground. She could not get on and off the ground without assistance before she started working with me, and that was her biggest fear. She's now getting 6 burpees, which are just inchworms, in a minute. I was like, cool, done.
That's awesome. No,
there is some aspect to it. It's not global, but it's not completely stupid.
I would say that's way more impressive than even if you can do at her age, and being able to do that from where she was coming from. That's more impressive than someone doing 500 in a minute. Mm-hmm. I'll argue that forever. Yep. No, but that's awesome. Kind of see where the clients, like where that stretch of clients you work from is. Like there's such a big spectrum, people with various goals, like all the ways you're able to do it. Like there's a lot of tools that you kind of have to pull out to work with all those people. So that's definitely awesome to kind of hear. Hey, so you don't have to do burpees for this. Cool. Like unless you want, you can do whatever you want in preparation, but I got 4 questions for 4 quarters, and then you can go rapid fire or you could take your time. But you ready?
We have him.
All right. First one I got for you: biggest influence in strength and conditioning and favorite athlete of all time.
Cam Davidson, now at Colorado College, he was always my biggest mentor at Penn State, always someone I could always shoot a question towards, even if he made fun of me. I still always respected him and his word. And favorite athlete, are you speaking like of all time?
Ooh, unless you got a strength sport one that's like dead set on, you can go all time.
I don't have a strength sport one. Obviously I grew up playing baseball, loving the sport of baseball. I still am a huge Atlanta Braves fan, and I live in Philly country. It's amazing this past year living in Philly country, being a Brave World Championship Braves fan. Chipper Jones is someone who I've always admired. He stayed in Atlanta his entire life. He always approached the game as being one of the harder workers on the team. He was one of the reasons why I played baseball to begin with. So Chipper Jones.
All right. Hey, so when you're not coaching or training, what are some of your favorite hobbies outside of the weight room?
I cook for my wife a lot. Her parents got me the grill that's on my backyard. That's in my backyard right now. It is a big ass griddle as opposed to like a charcoal grill. Game changer. Imagine like if you had a charcoal grill and you had to do cooking, like you had stuff on the stove, stuff in the oven, you're running in and outside. This thing is big enough. You could do all your work right on that grill. You could do breakfast, you could do lunch, dinner, doesn't matter. You could throw so much stuff on there. As opposed to that, I am a huge Marvel nerd. I will go to every opening night Marvel movie. I do own some comics. I own every Blu-ray. I take part in trivia nights throughout the area. I'm a nerd, I know, but it's my little getaway from life.
Hey, so if you were not coaching, what do you think your career would be? And if you could go pro in any sport, what sport would that be?
Damn, those are amazing. Those might have been your best questions. If I could do anything besides coaching, I would like to own a restaurant. I think the hours would be tough, but I would like to own my own restaurant. No idea what it would be. I just think I've interacted with people across my life who have owned restaurants, and they always seem like they're super happy to have just anyone come into their doors, and they're super thankful of everything. They've always treated any guest with amazing kindness, and I think that would just be really, really cool. And I'm sorry, repeat the second question.
If you could go pro in any sport,
Pickleball or ping pong, one of the two. Love it.
They have pro pickleball.
Yeah. Oh yeah, dude. Google it or YouTube it. It's insane.
All right.
Promise you.
All right. If you're setting up an ideal training day for yourself, what's your go-to music and what is your hands down best post-training meal?
Country music. I'm one of the weirdest people that will train to country music, but it can rev you up and cool you down. And it's just all encompassing. Luke Combs radio on Pandora never misses. Post-workout meal. That's a good one. I have to go with just a big 10-ounce filet, nice big potatoes with some cheese sprinkled on it, and grilled asparagus. I'm a simple guy. I don't need any dessert or anything like that. Just give me some steak and carbs.
Steak is dessert. So last one I got for you, favorite thing or most important lesson the barbell has taught you about life?
Oh, there are definitely days where life feels heavier than other days. Sometimes you have to roll with the punches and be humbled by how heavy it feels, because it's molding you into a stronger person, whether you like it or not.
I love it, man. No, that's awesome. I think that's definitely a great way to put it. And the weight on the bar always stays the same, but the type of person that when you step up to it is definitely different. And You're not going to get any easier days. You just hope that you get stronger along the way.
A little bit better, a little bit stronger.
I like it, man. Hey, so for anybody that's got more questions, they want to follow up with you or see how your soon-to-be competition goes, where can they follow you and see what you got going on? Or if they're in the King of Prussia area, where can they find you when you're coaching?
I would say my Instagram is probably what I'm on most, at Sean, Fan, the number 2, the letter Z. So it spells out Sean Fantuzzi. Twitter, it's the same. I think my YouTube is the same as well. I can't really remember, but I don't really do a whole lot yet. I'm trying to build up a little bit of an exercise library on my YouTube and get a couple things out. I think that's it. I'm not going to put my cell phone number up. If you have my cell phone number, you know how to contact me. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, we'll pass it around. So
please don't put that in the show notes.
No, it won't be. Don't worry.
I'm terrible. You can ask my wife. I'm terrible at texting anyway. So even if you do text me, the likelihood of me answering is at least likelihood of me answering in the next hour, very low.
Yeah, I'm not putting that voodoo on anybody. No. Hey, man, it's been great to catch up. I really appreciate you coming on today, and I hope you guys crush it when you're in Montreal and you get some celebratory Canadian beers while you're out there.
Molson, baby. That's hopefully we do really well. We're going in literally as like the final team to be invited in, so we're in dead last right now. So anything above that is just money in the bank. So no, it's going to be a good experience, and thank you so much for having me. This is an honor. I always love and appreciate people that invite me onto their shows, because I feel like they just then run out of people to actually talk to if they're inviting me. So thank you so much.
No, man, of course. It was great to have you on, man. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good, man.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.